on to our last guest for the morning here on FreightWaves Now. And joining us, we've got Michael Colin, who is the founder and CEO over at Movement. Michael, thank you for joining us. Sick jacket, by the way. I love that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, Michael, joining us this morning, tell us a little bit about Movement and what you guys offer.
Yeah. So we're about 2 years old now. We're a Chicago-based startup, and we're working on basically the next generation of TMS technology, primarily for small and medium-sized brokerages.
Small to medium brokers are people who okay, we love brokerages, right? Like, I'm not disparaging brokerages. They popped up like daisies during the pandemic. Like, everybody was like, I'm going to open a brokerage, whether you were an existing broker, you were a brand new broker, and you're like, I'm going to do this by myself. But we know that in a freight market, like the way that it's going, the last in are going to be the first out if you don't make the right moves, right? So if you are the small to medium brokerage right now and you're sitting here going, crap, the market is taking this downturn, I'm brand new, how do I survive? How much of a role does technology like what Movement offers play into making sure that you aren't one of those ones out first?
So, it plays a really big role and for two separate reasons. When we started the company, we actually bootstrapped as a brokerage as a way to have cash flow.
I love it.
Had to go through this problem myself, but you have both the importance of good technology, right? So that way you can compete with larger companies that have built their own TMS or built their own software. But then you also have the cash flow problem, right? And other different services that normally have sat outside of TMS that we actually try to bring inside. So new startup brokerage, sure, brokerage is arbitrage, you can make money doing that. But what happens when you need to pay your carriers? You can't be approved by new factoring companies, or you're a new company, so you can't get approved for factoring. How do you handle that? And that's something that we pipe through the TMS as a way to assist these companies.
And so that was going to be my other question is because we've heard of TMSs, they've been around for some time. Your approach, where are you seeing the gap that's needed to be served right now within the industry, and how does that really kind of change moving forward in the upcoming years?
Yeah, so the first gap is, how do you get off-the-shelf products that can compete with larger ones, right? Every brokerage wants to get to a certain size, and the number's been probably like $250 million in revenue, I think, historically. You build your own TMS. And the reason you do that is because, there's a handful of reasons, but ultimately, the TMS off the shelf becomes an inhibitor to additional revenue streams, managing your data properly, and so you have companies build that. First step is, how do you address those kind of core TMS themes and bring that downstream to the rest of the market? And then the second part is, how do you expand what we think of when we think of TMS, right? Because, and this is true of pretty much every technology in every industry, is that at some point at maturity, you move from a lot of companies so that they're offering point solutions as their core product, and then moving to platforms, right? And when you think about brokerage, the core platform is the TMS.
So with that, if you're a broker and you're sitting here, there are so many options for TMS technology out there, right? Like, you could walk down this hallway and everybody would be like, I like this TMS, I like this TMS. Well, actually, I like this TMS. And a lot of it comes down to personal preference and for knowing what is right for your business and understanding that it's okay to change, right? Like, just because you have committed to this one TMS doesn't mean that you have to stay committed to it. Is that something that you guys kind of talk about when you go into this kind of consulting mode, talking about how to better utilize transportation management as a whole? Is that understanding, like, just because it worked for you at the start doesn't necessarily mean it's working for you now?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that we do, we specifically give our product away for free, and that really helps those conversations, right?
Because huge, especially in the small brokerage world.
Yeah, you have a lot of considerations as it relates to, okay, well, how do I get my data out of my existing system, and being able to have these conversations, say, like, look, like, just try it out, right? Even if you use your existing system and then just use our product for enabling quick pay, that at least gets the conversation started, and then we can kind of show how we can improve their business from there.
And the other big thing is that you have a host of solutions. So can you talk to that visibility aspect that you guys offer?
Yeah, so, there was a really good point made earlier about integrations, right, and how important they are. And I think that's especially true at the TMS level. We kind of say it internally, like, we are who we integrate with. And so, the visibility component specifically, obviously integrating with major visibility providers, but then also offering, individual solutions that allow, like text-based tracking and stuff like that. So you can both use your existing providers and then just another off-the-shelf product.
Cost inhibition is often a massive barrier to entry when you're talking about either finding a TMS that works for you, trying some stuff on for size, or switching from what you had before. You mentioned that you give away the product for free, which I think is huge, especially in an industry like this, which oftentimes relies on the bootstrappers getting in and doing the hard work and maybe not having a lot of free cash flow to invest in things at the beginning, right? And it can be costly to sit here and say, well, crap, we invested all this money in this and it doesn't work for what we're doing and now we're stuck with it, right? When you look at that, how does that separate you guys in the industry when you're competing specifically for business from the smaller brokerages?
I mean, I think it's one of the largest differentiators for sure. And both on cost considerations and then also kind of the point about taking what larger brokerages have built and bringing that downstream, because that also gives you the ability to recognize additional revenue, right? From more complicated types of shipments or whatever that you normally wouldn't be able to do. So you have this kind of double part, like two-part conversation where it's, hey, we'll help you save money by not spending it on a bunch of SaaS. And then also we can turn that into additional revenue as well. And I think that, like, especially as somebody who, ran a brokerage at one point, the consideration around cost is, one, you think about that in loads per day. And then two, you're booking, especially for small brokerages, it's mostly spots, so you're booking day of loads. We talk about, like lack of adoption of technology, but it's not really a conversation about like, I don't want to do this. It's a conversation of like, I don't have the time, right?
I can't.
Because capacity goes so quickly.
And we've, of course, started out the conversation around brokers, but you also have some options and solutions for carriers as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so all of the kind of financial suite can be accessed by carriers into our platform. Same thing with, we do have tools that shippers can use as well. That's mostly a result of pivoting, as a startup does. But the core customer base right now is brokerages.
So going forward, looking into the end of 2022, the start of 2023, obviously we're going to see some people not make the cut, right? It's lights out for some of them. What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge facing these small to medium brokerages going forward throughout the rest of this quarter and into the start of next year?
Yeah, so unfortunately, and both carriers and brokers suffer from this, like the trifecta of razor thin margins, high operating costs, and poor access to capital, right? Which is why, that's the reason for the whole pro-cyclical, like boom and bust nature of transportation. And so that is, that cash flow pretty much is king and is really the main concern when it comes to going in and out of business. So that'd pretty much be the number one.
And I think it's really cool what you guys are doing, because it's that availability is almost leveling the playing field in a sense. And I think that's going to be something that not helps, a lot. It's going to help a lot of individuals, small and medium sized, as Kaylee mentioned, going to be some of the first to really be hit hard. Of course, as we continue to see softening in the market to really be successful.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And you have existing companies that may or may not go out of business because of that, and also just enabling people to go out on their own and start their own companies. That you talk about entrepreneurship. A lot of times you think about, oh, I just don't have the budget to do something, right? It's like, oh, I only have X amount of money to go start this business, and then you start it, and then you're like, oh crap, nobody's factoring company can use me. Now what do I do? And so I was paying 50% on pickup and 50% on delivery. Oof. It was terrible. So it becomes very, very difficult, both from like maintaining your existing business and preventing people who would otherwise go start new ones. You want to make sure that you can enable that.
Well, Michael, it sounds like you guys are offering, as Anthony mentioned, this kind of level playing field for these folks getting into the industry. It's awesome stuff you guys are doing. If people want to check out Movement, where can they go to do that?
So movement.io, that's stylized MVMNT online, and we've got a booth about halfway through.
Was removing the vowels just like intentional to stick you guys out?
I thought it was cool when we started it. That was pretty much it.
I like it. Like it's short, it's sweet, it's to the point, and then you don't have to worry about the vowels.
Yep.
It is cool. I'm a fan.
You got an approval from Anthony Smith, so it's all good. All right, Michael, thank you so much. Go ahead and go see them at the booth if you haven't. They also had a demo yesterday as well, which means that they're in the best in show running, which we will announce later on this afternoon.